An article for advocate.com. A state Senate bill aimed at lessening the governor's ability to influence how Louisiana holds elections during times of emergency advanced Tuesday. So sort of a two-parter to start. What is the governor doing that you think is overstepping his emergency authority? And tell us about the bill. What's the status? What do you hope it does?
Sure. Well, current law does provide for the fact that if there is an emergency, it provides for the Secretary of State to say, I cannot conduct an election in this environment without making some changes. And if a Senate and a House committee, one of which I chair, and the governor all agree with that assessment, then we would direct the Secretary of State to prepare an emergency election plan. So currently, both of these legislative committees are either or the full legislature or the governor could kill his plan at any step in the process. And as you might remember, that actually happened with the most recent emergency election plan that we considered in August that would control the operations for the November and December elections. The legislative committees and the full legislature agreed with the emergency election plan, and the governor did not. So that threw us basically back to current law. And then there was a lawsuit that was filed, and the judge ended up basically ruling as to how she thought the elections should be run. And, some of those decisions, in my opinion, were problematic. And so, to me, we always want the legislature to be able to control policy, and we want the chief elections officer, who is in the very best position, to be able to propose the very best plan. And so what my bill does is it creates a joint committee within the legislature, because part of our issue was that this whole process took too much time, and that if any one entity, as I said before, didn't agree with the plan, then the Secretary of State had to go back to the drawing board and start all over. It's kind of like going back to first base.
Yeah.
And that created a huge time problem for the Secretary of State in terms of getting a decision made that would allow us to move forward on the elections. So my bill basically streamlines it, and most importantly, it gives the legislature the ability, if the governor does veto the plan, it gives the full legislature the ability with a 2/3 vote to override that veto.
Your bill is passed in the Senate, and what's the status on the House side?
It'll be heard on the House floor this morning at 9 o'clock.
And are you optimistic?
I am optimistic. I think it's good policy. For me, it works regardless of who's in the governor's office or who's controlling the legislature. It has checks and balances in the system between the executive branch and the legislative branch, as we do with all legislation. And so the idea of giving the legislature an opportunity to override a governor's veto is very consistent with everything else that we do in terms of lawmaking at the Capitol. So I do believe it'll pass in the House today. I'm not sure exactly if the governor will sign it or not. I've been in conversations with his office about that, but I don't have any commitments as of yet.
Ms. Sharon, Secretary of State Kyle Ardoin, does he have an opinion on this? Is he for this bill?
He is. He is very supportive. What he doesn't want to be is kind of a ping-pong ball that gets bounced around between all the different entities that can't agree. And so what I think he does like about this bill is that, first of all, I'm consolidating the two committees into one, and we provide in my bill an opportunity for him to present multiple plans. So, for example, if we, during the public hearing discussion in committee, come up with some different ideas or things that we think would improve the plan, we could temporarily recess the committee hearing. He could add that into the plan and come back, and we could approve it on the spot. Instead, under current law, it's kind of like he has to ask mom, and then go ask dad, and then go ask grandpa. And if anybody says no, he has to go back to the very beginning all over again. Under my bill, that would be a much more streamlined process, and I believe we'll end up with a better plan.
Let me ask you this real quick, our last 30 seconds or so, Senator Sharon Hewitt. For those who say that this is an attempt to manipulate the elections, what ye say to them?
Well, this is just about providing a better process. This has nothing to do with the elections. It has nothing to do with with what party controls the governor's office or the legislative offices. It's just about doing something faster, and I think in a more competent way with a much better product. With all the checks and balances between the legislative branch and the executive branch that are kind of the foundation of our democracy.